All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Mindset U. We have Rances to my left, and I'm here on the right side. And we are missing Jay today because I'm sure he's out there enjoying life, probably boxing somebody on the street. But today we are talking about our personal stories in X Corp, the corporate life, and a full cycle of becoming a bitch, recognizing that we were little bitches, and then coming out of it because we coached ourselves out of it when we hit rock bottom. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. I hope you take some value from it. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, iTunes when I get it back up and running, and anywhere else that you search up Mindset U. Enjoy. All right, Rances. So, kind of both been in a similar spot past couple months with X Corp. And it's not Twitter account. It's a different corporation, guys. But kind of want to hear what you went through in the past couple months. I know you've spoken to me a lot about your future within X Corp and moves to kind of enhance or improve the reality that you're currently living, whether it's with X Corp or without X Corp. So why don't you tell me what's been going on there?
Well, since I started this role, I want to preface this with I started in this company because I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to be pushed and led in terms of developing. I always have felt like I've been the leader. I've been leading and driving others. And I never had that like other person or guide that I'm like kind of striving to keep up with. So that was one of the big factors for me. In addition to that was also the ability to test out my hypothesis on how I do coaching with one-on-one and the concepts that we done in VidaProject in terms of leadership training and how we ran our team and created this great culture. So with those things in place, I came into this company and, had my eyes open, ready to kind of jump in. And then after a short while, I started feeling like I'm in a box. Like I had to stay on my lane. I couldn't explore, couldn't color outside the lines too much. I had to just follow the curriculum, stick to it. Because I didn't have much power or freedom to create things or implement things. In my position, it was like what it seemed like it was before compared to what I experienced it to be was very different. So over time, I started feeling like day after day after day, everything was like repetitive. It was like months were passing by and it felt like a day because it was like Groundhog's Day. It's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. No creative initiative, no way to really change or transform a concept or the people or anything. So with that, I started feeling like I was losing myself. And with that losing myself, like I had no control over the outcome, which started making me feel really disempowered and losing kind of my identity.
Question.
Yeah.
Did you feel like a sense of incompetence or like what's it called? Inferior? Like, was there any moment in those things? Like,
no, and I would say it's the opposite. I felt more so like I'm surrounded by a bunch of idiots.
How do you know that's not just like pure arrogance and your cognitive biases?
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of part of what I was going through in the moment of like feeling like, because the key factor with this was like typically me arguing, me able to fight my point and my perspective is a big part of like the way we've done our business, the way I have my close relationships. And what I found was that I wasn't able to do that. So I wasn't able to get argued back with and be disproven on certain things. And also I wasn't able to go out and test things. So what I felt was, hey, no, stop trying to do this or do that. Do it this way. This is the way we do it. And when it comes to coaching, I'm pretty arrogant in coaching because I've spent my life really studying and implementing coaching patterns and for the purpose of effectiveness. So when someone tries to tell me how to coach and that this is the way to coach, even though I'm seeing problems with it, challenges with it, but I'm not allowed to use my skill set, that left me feeling very arrogant of, hey, I know how to coach. I'm not allowed to coach how to coach, but I have to follow this kind of template of say this, then that, and then move on. And change wouldn't happen from that. But I would get my management come down on me because I did something different from the format of it, not from the outcome. So that's where the arrogance came from, but also where the stifling feeling came from. Did that answer that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why you fell in line. If you did fall in line, did you fall in line?
Yes.
Why?
And that's where shame comes from. So be careful. So I started, and this is the part where it really like triggers me towards me, where I started feeling like there's, because the whole thing was at the beginning, I was like fighting a lot. I was arguing a lot and kind of fell to deaf ears in a sense. So my fight meant nothing and it didn't create any space or whatever. And in fact, I got a few times where I got, I got sent an email saying, hey, I need to change this, or someone complained about me and all this stuff. So then I started feeling powerless in that sense. So I fell in line because I started to lose hope that something can be done. And it was just like, this is just the way it is. This is the way corporate world is. And once that started setting in, that was when, like, internally, I know it's dramatic sounding, but internally, I felt like I started dying. So yeah, it was like repetitive, like the repetitiveness of getting shut down started causing that falling in line. And I say there's shame there because, like, from my identity, that's not who I am. I don't fall in line. I never have, not even in school, even though they tried to do that to me all the time. Like, so it's like a personal thing that I started kind of dealing with when I became aware of it. Of like, how could you let this happen?
So what did you do?
For me, there was a moment where I was when I was going to my cognitive therapy session. There's two parts to it. One of which is basically emotion regulation, right? So they walk you through meditation, and I had shared before, like the temperature of your hand. They measure the temperature. They measure the oxygen level. They measure your heart rate. And she asks, what's your anxiety level? And I say like 3, and then she puts me on the thing, and it says, no, you're actually at 7. So then you do the meditation, and you see it go down, and you like, when I come out of it, I'm like, oh, this is actually 3. So that helped me start to learn that. But in going to one of the sessions, she always starts off like asking me how I'm doing, how I'm managing, and so on and so forth. Just little conversations as she sets up the equipment. And, I told her, I'm feeling really trapped in this and so on and so forth. And she said something so stupid, something so simple that I've said to so many people, which was, well, in whatever situation we're in, we got to remember that there's always something that we can control. And I was like, that hit me like a ton of bricks. So simple, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, of course. So then that kind of started off the reflection process where I started journaling. And what I do when I journal is I write my story of like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, this, right? Like if I'm talking to someone. And then parallel to that, I write counter argument where it's almost like I'm coaching my story. So I highlight points. So in doing that, helped me kind of open up my perspective and start seeing different angles of it, where I was like, I've been doing this to myself. I just tried to fight things the way that I've done for the past few years, and that didn't work out, so I gave up. Instead of like recognizing, oh, there's other ways around. So I was blind to all of it, which is so simple, which that's where the shame comes from, of like, how could you coach people on coming out of this? You pride yourself in having the identity of like, hey, you're always questioning things and everything. How could you so easily, so quickly fall in line?
Well, I kind of see how that could happen, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said it yourself. You were, for years, you've primarily worked alone and then with a small team in which you led, in which you called the shots, in which you dictated the culture, the way that meetings were ran, and all these things. And now you're no longer in a position that allows you to do that. And I think it's very difficult to lead the way you lead from the position that you're currently in, because it requires you to it requires the leadership that requires in your level and even my level requires a more of an influential kind of aspect to it, versus I have the authority. This is the way we do things in our business, in our entity. This is how we operate.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can just imagine you trying to be Rances in X Corp when X Corp has a completely different culture, and X Corp has new leadership and new identities and a new philosophy, new operating system. So like within that, I think you just try to force this identity leader of Rances into the box.
Mm-hmm. This is one thing you just said that blew my mind just now. Like seriously, which is like also on top of that, I came into this company with that idea of like, I want to be led. So almost like I had the vulnerability to it, because I was very open to, to implementing or learning new concepts. So, which, it's an interesting point. I don't think that that's a negative, like having the learner's mind type of thing is a negative thing, but in this sense, I may have allowed myself to go into that because otherwise then I'm being too much, too forceful and not being open to be led. You know what I'm saying? If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. So when going back to the whole thing is like when I started getting very arrogant on it, highlighting that as like, oh, I don't feel like I have any control, and also I don't feel like I'm being led in a growth direction. Like I needed to get to that point in order to then like reframe it all.
Well, I think also, and I think I struggle with this too, is that arrogance is what kind of forces you to or forces at least me to be that way. Um, you, you for so many years I've been in my own bubble, right? And now I see how other bubbles operate, and I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is dumb. This is my bubble. This is what I would do. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to say that, when you're looking at it from one perspective and you don't understand where other individuals are making that decision or why they're making that decision. Granted, it doesn't discount the thoughts that we have, but
Mm-hmm.
I can see how arrogance can influence you, and then it's almost like you want to lead, you want to shift things because it's gonna, or you feel that it's going to make such a change in a very short amount of time, and then you try so hard to make it happen, and then you kept getting blocked, and then you're just like, oh, this shit sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Never
Yeah.
even focus on like, oh, I gotta get better at influencing people to agree with me.
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
but yeah, yeah.
Which was like that was the part where like for me, like once I shifted and I realized that, then I was like, okay, so then looking at it from this vantage point, now how do I then become a source of influence and implement things and also make changes and so on and so forth. And part of it was like to just be like, you know what? I don't care what you say. I don't care about getting fired or anything like that. So losing that fear of like, oh, I can't lose this, like, which I didn't have a lot of, but I had some because of my personal life and the house and all that stuff. But once I was like, I'm done with this, it kind of really released me from that cage. Which then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do things my way, and I'm going to connect with the people that can help me do this and kind of explain, bring them on board, if you will, with me, whether they're people in the same kind of level as me or the people around, beyond my management, like my direct management. I started aligning with that. So I started setting up meetings with the head of HR and this other person who works in HR. Then I started sharing with my counterparts, and coming up with like, this is what I'm going to implement, and sharing with them at the point when I was ready to deploy. So that was also the factor of like sharing things when they were too much in their infancy, and then it's like, yeah, but that wouldn't work because this. It is too raw to share at the very beginning of an idea. So kind of really thinking it out and putting a plan in place where now you can share it, and yeah, they'll have their rebuttals. Maybe that won't work, but you've thought about those things, so you can say yeah. Or some of the big vulnerabilities, you can really be like, oh, that's a good point that I missed. Let me go back to the drawing board. So that was a big change in my approach. And then I started implementing things and leading the way I want to lead in terms of my people, at least. And then everything like shifted now. Like the other factor was also taking control in terms of like a big part of the impact was my personal life, how much this was bleeding into my personal life. So like exercising and the time of day. So I set hard boundaries of like, I'm not starting before 6:45. Like, I don't care what it is. If I have to send an email and it's late, I don't care. Again, losing that fear allows me to kind of set those boundaries stronger. And you know what? Nothing burns down. No one dies. Then I don't send an email before 7. So actually, no one even bats an eye. No one even notices. So, like, I don't know. Once I changed my mindset on it, everything just got easier. And then I felt not just better about it, but more empowered in the whole thing. And then that's where my realm of influence also started to grow. So it's all by a shift from like that one catalyst moment.
It's like the 48 Laws of Power. You ever read that book?
Yeah.
They talk about it, man. It's like when you try to force things, in this game, you gotta maneuver these personalities and egos and try to influence them onto your perspective, into your perspective. I think that's one of the hardest things to do.
You had shared yesterday in our business meeting that you had a recent shift as well.
Yeah, I was gonna quit. Like I literally put my day in.
Okay.
I had a day set and everything. I mean, just for some context, I have a lot of things happening in my personal side. One is this house that we recently purchased and in the middle of construction. And I have no kitchen, which means I'm eating out all the time, running to Home Depot like 8 times on the weekend, at least one time after work every single day. So it like yourself, it bled into my personal life, and it put me in a very dark place, like deep hole. And then like with the time, there's no access to like other communities, right? Friends, the time spent with friends, the time like with family. I don't have that, so like talking about these things are very difficult. And then of course, Marina and I are just focused on the house, so we're both with our heads down in that, and we're both frustrated. So like talking about that and putting more pressure on her to with what I'm dealing in my world isn't necessarily helpful. So it's like very alone in the past couple months. I would say 3 months. So I was like, damn, I gotta get out of here. Like I gotta get out of this. This isn't healthy. I don't feel good. I feel unhealthy. I feel exhausted. I feel like I'm dying. Like literally dying. Like that's what's going through my head. Like I'm probably like got cancer and like just diabetes and just like all these negative thoughts just coming out. And I was like, all right, only controllable is X Corp. I got to get rid of X Corp. It's the only control I have.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, like below, comment, let us know your thoughts, and continue to enjoy.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the podcast, but want to give you a quick announcement. Be on the lookout for something exciting that's coming out in the next couple months. Rances, myself, and some other people, we're not going to say who, are coming back, and we're coming back with a lot of energy and a lot of great stuff. It's going to be super exciting. So if you're interested in being a part of it, just drop a comment or hit us up, DM us on Instagram, Mindset Mechanic, or Rances VidaProject.
VidaProject.
Yep. Let us know, and we'll make you. We'll write your name on the list, and we'll get you going. All right. It's going to be super exciting. I'm telling you, I don't want to announce it because it's too good. But yeah. All right. Now let's get back to the show.
Because you mentioned like all the pressures in terms of your life as a whole, right?
Yeah.
But then you decided that X Corp was a problem. But based off of what you said, like the house was a problem, the communication in your relationship, the food, like it seems like it was all stuff outside of X Corp. So why X Corp is the one that got to go?
Because I'm not gonna abandon my house, my partner, you know, and the food thing is really just a temporary situation. So like those things are non-negotiables for me. Like the house and my
Mhm.
partner are non-negotiables for me. Uh, so the only negotiable thing is X Corp, and the plan was never to stay in X Corp for my life. You know, like I'm always again like yourself. My intention was to go in and learn about operations, finance, and also to see if the philosophies that we run by in terms of culture are effective. And I felt like I was very successful in that aspect. Like I found out my answer within 6 months. I was like, oh shit, yeah, this works. Um, like that's the one thing that holds me back from leaving X Corp is because like I've built such a family there. It's kind of reminiscent of the VidaProject days and how close everybody is and how much everyone shares. It's like a big family, and anybody that comes in there and sees it, they're like, "Oh wow, this is like it is different here. And you guys are like a family." And it's like, yeah. So that was always the thing that like held me back from leaving X Corp. Um, but my health was like my mental health and my physical health were like the number one things, and they still are the number one things. So I put my day in. I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm done. Like I tapped out. This is
Mhm.
it. And then I started thinking of the plans and how to get back into the business, our business, and how I'm going to make things work, how I'm going to make ends meet. And I had this plan that I kind of subjectively and went through, and I was like, all right, I can do it. I know I'm capable of it. And then I was supposed to have a meeting with everybody about plans on what I'm gonna supposed to do before I leave, and make sure everything's set in place so that the next person can, you know, be a nice smooth transition. So I go and I think about it, and for the first time in a while, I've just had an evening to kind of just sit down and reflect, and just think about things. And before I go into what I thought about, I want to go into like a side story where I spoke to my therapist, and I kind of expressed this kind of pattern that I notice about myself, where it's like when when things get very difficult and I don't have or I can't see a way out in those moments, my base reaction is to be like, all right, that's it. And it's typically around, it's like an interesting thing. Like the timing around is like a year to a year and a half within things. Um, and I told her about this pattern, and then she's like, "What do you do on this pattern?" I'm like, "Oh, I go to the next thing, the next venture," you know. And I'm just like, I'm always looking to grow. I'm always looking to like, you know, feel good about what I'm doing. And she was like, "Oh, that's interesting." She was like, "It sounds like you never give yourself a break. Like you've had success, you get to a point where you kind of are at where you want it to be, and then that's not good enough. So then your only kind of thing is to jump ship, say this is not good enough, and then go find the next thing." And I was like, oh shit. I was like, yeah. And it was like went to stories with my father and like kind of issues that I had with my dad, which is like this
Mhm.
all this idea of always wanting to be the best and always wanting to make him proud and be successful. And success is like this thing, but it's just like if you don't give yourself a break, if you can't just stay in there for a little while, uh, you're just going to
So
continue to burn out.
so a break in terms of like give yourself a break, like you mean give yourself like time off or give yourself a break from the pressure? What do you
From the
mean by give
pressure, it's
yourself?
like I think it's more so from like enjoy the fruits of the labor, like enjoy the step that you've taken, you know. And like for example, I started the job, first 6 months on the job. It's first of all, X Corp really intense, especially at like the level that I'm at. You're being pulled in like 1,000 different directions. It's nonstop. It's 10 to 12 hours, 13 hours a day for 4 days straight. It's exhausting. So and a lot of information. So the first 6 months was just that. Then first 6 months, I felt good. I felt great in December. I was like, oh shit, I'm really proud, all that. January comes, okay, we buy a house. February comes, we're like, all right, let's start construction. So I just put myself again into this situation instead of just like chilling for a second and just be like, all right, like let's settle down. And it's just like, no, it's the next thing. It's the next thing. Like, what's the next thing? I'm always looking like for that. And it reminded me of our business where I was just like, oh, we got to this point. Okay, let's scale to the next thing. Like, and it's more like, no, bro, do this for a little bit longer. Stay here for a little bit. Like, get better at this, and then move to the next thing. And that's when I was like, oh shit. So then I went home and I had this moment to reflect, and I was like, well, let me think about this like a little bit more logically. So I planned out what my day at X Corp looks like, and then I planned out my day. What would it look like if I went back to what I used to do? And essentially came down to the math, and I was just like, oh, I saved like 1 hour a day, right? And with a 30% reduction in my salary, which means that 1 hour a day I'm going to have to spend trying to navigate and find a way to make up for the 30% that I'm the loss, which then I'm kind of still left with the same amount of time to build our business. So I was like, all right, this doesn't make much sense. So I was like, what am I trying to control here? And it's like time. And then I scrolling through Instagram and I saw Alex Hormozy, and he talks about the one habit that has made him very successful. And he's like, I've been a dick with my time my entire life. And I was just like, yeah, like I'm not protecting my time, like very similar to yourself, like the boundaries on my time, dedicating myself to, even it's 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week is better than 0 hours towards the business, right? If I would have done that for the past year, what would that look like now? Where would I be now? And I didn't do that. If I was more of a dick with my time, I have more control. So I was just like, that was a skill that I used to have before when we were at VidaProject. I would plan out my day kind of, and I went through this where in the beginning, when I started the entrepreneurship, I like didn't really know what to do with my time. And then I went to X Corp and I'm like, all right, my time is decided for me. So I'm just gonna go. And then I was just like, no, this is a dumb decision I'm about to make. Let me chill here for a little bit. I like the people that I work with. I love the people that I work with. My good friend is my boss, so I'm in a good position. I was just like, I do good at my job. I'm good at what I do. I can get better at it. And I've grown a lot in this position. So I was just like, there are a lot of good things that came out of this, and there are still a lot of good things to pull from it. And I was just like, I just got to be more organized. And I was like, that's on me.
Yeah.
It's not them. So then, like the day of the meeting that I was supposed to meet with all these people, I called my boss, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not quitting.
I'm not
fucking leaving. I'm not fucking leaving. Both of Wall Street. So and when I told them, everybody like cheered. It was like, it was literally like, at least one of my good coworkers that I'm real close with. He was like, yeah. He was so hyped. He was so hyped. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. With what you were sharing, I also I drew other parallels in terms of like the external pressure, right? Like similar to you, I never got to kind of even like take anything in. It was like right away running. Like same thing. We bought a house. Our kids started private school. Like I was in the process of recovering, and that's why I'm still going to the cognitive therapy. I'm still recovering my brain. Like so many of these external factors that leaves you at a point of like, okay, so like all this stuff happening, you have no space to think, you have no space to reflect, you have no space to really understand things. So it leaves you with like, okay, so then I'm not happy. What do I blame? Who do I blame? You know,
It's
and
easier.
yeah, it's easier, but it's also like there's the side of it. It's easier because the other the other the other perspective requires reflection, requires like alone time to really think and process things, you know? And if the first step, like you said, you're not a dick with your time and giving yourself that space, then you don't have that. And
Yeah.
I can so much more than ever understand how someone can be in a role like this for 10 years and not even like realize how much time has passed, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like you said, your time is managed for you because these are all the things that you're supposed to do with your time. And then when you have some free time, you're just like, oh, I just want to unplug and be a couch potato
Mm-hmm.
so I can recover to go back into the repetition of it all, to the Groundhog Day.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see how that cycle can be. So it's not so much like it's easy because like you're not willing to put in the work, but it's easy because it's it's almost built into the system to become like the way that you just continue to pass life, and then you no longer are living or thriving in life. You're just surviving.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it from like the victim mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and how it gets louder and louder as things go on. And if you don't have the time to train these other voices in your head,
Yeah.
your warrior and your thinker, then it's very easy for you to spiral into this train of thinking, which
Mm-hmm.
then makes you take an action, right? And it's all based on your previous like stories and beliefs and who you believe you are and what you're supposed to be doing and all these things that are surrounded around your identity. And it's just so easy for the victim to be like, yeah, no, this ain't it, bro.
Mm-hmm.
This is not it. And maybe it's not, uh but the reality is like, I think if you do leave something, it should be in a good place. And I think of everybody that like left VidaProject and where they went to, and I think of the people that are successful after that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they left from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
They left feeling good about leaving VidaProject.
Yeah.
And I think I want that before I leave X Corp. I want to feel good about leaving. If I leave, it's because I did something great, and now I'm on to something greater. Not
It's,
because I'm in a hole right now.
so you want to say you want to leave in a sense of accomplishment rather than of
Yeah,
desperation or
and I want the people that I influence to feel that way too. I just don't want it to be me. I don't want to just feel that way. I also want the people to feel that way. I want the people to feel like great and happy about me and
mm-hmm.
what I'm going on to my next chapter.
Yeah. I just want to highlight one thing that you were talking about before, like the voices, the victim, the warrior, the thinker. This is a concept that we always taught at VidaProject, and it's similar to like the Inside Out storyline of like the emotions. Each one has a personality that does different things. So we would kind of teach the same idea of we have these kind of internal personas within ourselves. We have a victim, right? That's kind of like the fear, and we have the warrior, but they're like amalgamations of a bunch of emotions, right? So that idea, that concept is also understood in a like simpler label, if you will, by psychology, utilizing the uh, external locus of control versus the internal locus of control. So it's a great thing to understand. External locus of control stands for ELOC, right? So, or rather, ELOC stands for external locus of control, where you're you're giving away the impact and the empowerment, the influence on things to external factors. So you're saying that your environment is the one in control, right? And it's a mindset point. It's a perspective. It's like, oh, I can't do this because my environment is this, and I need this other thing in my environment, and I need this person to do that. And it's always this external kind of thing, which is like what we talk about, the victim mindset. It's like you have no power. It's all outside of you, right? Where the internal locus of control is like, oh, there's something for you to control. There's always a element that you have influence over. And sometimes that could just be your perspective on how you see the situation. I say you can't change the situation, but the way you see the situation, that is always in your hands.
So
And I
in
think
all,
that's
stop being a bitch.
well, for Moses, that's the way he translates it.
I mean, I think Jay would agree with me. Don't be a little bitch. That's what he would say.
Is that what you would say, Jay? Tell us. Do a little like voiceover right here. Tell us, is that what you were saying?
Of course he would say. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of concepts that I'm learning and going to my therapist again, which has, by the way, motivated me to move into psychology. One of my future plans is to go study, like become a psychologist. I think that would be pretty cool. I enjoy that. And even from the business standpoint, there's a psychological aspect to it, which is I think is pretty cool. But yeah, man, the mind is a very interesting thing. The more I learn about myself, I'm like, fuck, man, this is crazy.
You know, this is gonna sound again arrogant as hell, but I went through my Instagram, like my own videos, and started listening to things. I was just like reviewing, like, what is it that I have up? And I started like listening to some other things, and I was like, I feel like I've forgotten so many of these things, you know? So it was like a nice little like journal reflection, coaching myself, you know, with these concepts. And I found that super interesting because I was like, what the hell's wrong with me? How could I just let go of all of this? And that's part of like going back to that shame.
Because your identity actually changes, man. Like I went to my therapist, first session, she was like, she just looked at me and was like, you're different. And I was like, what? It's like, we haven't even spoken. It's like, no, you're different. And it's just like my mind became so business focused and like cut off. Like it wasn't the person that spoke about these things and like entertained these things and just like was open and showed all this like these different emotions. Kind of was just like super disconnected. And she didn't even have to talk to me to see it. And I think
to recognize it.
Yeah, to recognize it. And you know, I think when you're in that environment, you're going to be, to a certain extent, forced to have a certain mindset, unless you're a dick with your time and you make the time to keep the things that you know, keep your mindset the way that you want it to be. You know, it requires effort. The thinking requires effort. You can't just expect that just because you did a bunch of work in the past years that you just keep it. It's like, oh, I used to go to the gym for 10 years. I'm strong. That's not going anywhere. You lose it all in a year.
Yeah. And to that point, to that
Exactly.
point, like for me, that was like in my role in X Corp, I felt like I was losing. I was instead of growing, I shared this with you at one point that I was doing the opposite. I was like losing my skill set and everything. And it had to do with that of like, oh, now again, same thing, like so business focused in terms of like, oh, the numbers and the graphs, and I'm looking at spreadsheets all day, and this is like the person I'm becoming, this like spreadsheet warrior. um, so like, it's like you're absolutely right. It's like whatever you're doing becomes your personality, becomes your like who you are.
Yeah.
And which is like, like you are what you eat in a sense, but it's more so it's are what you spend your time doing. So you have to be a dick with your time. You have to take control of who you are and who you will be. And the only way to do that is by making decisions for yourself and be self-empowered. All right. So thank you everyone for participating, listening to us talk about how we were little punk bitches in our perspective, or AKA having a ELOC mentality. Please share your thoughts on this, because we feel like a lot of people are experiencing this in terms of life becomes just monotonous and repetitive. How do you handle it? Or are you trying to figure out how to handle it? Because we want to learn how to empower others with what we do in our old time outside of X Corp, but also a project that we're working on that we want to have huge impacts with in terms of a community and your personal life. So let us know your thoughts. We want to make this a discussion. And thank you again for giving us the time and listening to us cry and whine about our lives. Peace.